Hello everyone, and welcome to this discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. I'm Andrew Knight. I've been with RICS for over 10 years now, working on our standards, regulation and thought leadership directorate, and my role is to not only lead the RICS Tech Partner Programme, but also look at the more broad effects of data and tech right across the profession and our various stakeholders. The Tech Partner Programme is a collaborative programme with various firms around the world who are involved in data and tech in all its forms as it affects the built and natural environment. And I'm very glad this afternoon to introduce David Fullerton and Mikkel Schmidt from Captego. So welcome to the call.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and yeah, really good to be here.
Great.
So I start with introducing.
Yeah, please introduce yourself. Yeah.
So I'm David Fullerton from Captego, as Andrew mentioned. I'm the head of the UK, which is responsible for bringing Captego from Denmark, which you're going to meet in a second, over to the UK and into all the different verticals that we apply. So that's kind of my role. I'm experiencing lots of different environments in which Captego works, and so it's a constant learning experience for me. And yeah, I'm really enjoying learning about the different industries, especially with RICS. Part of the role is to get strategic alliances with membership bodies such as yourself so that we can best serve that market. And over to my colleague and one of the co-founders, Mikkel.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Andrew, for having us. I'm CEO and product designer in Captego, and I actually have a background in engineering and master in architecture and design, where I met our co-founder, Bjarke, who ventured off into construction and home building, while I spent a lot of time in some design consultancies and ended up working with a lot of startups, most notably a large Danish fintech called Tradeshift that became one of the most successful startups of the last decade in Denmark. I always loved technology, and I think having this playing field in the startup and being able to apply technology to different problems is probably what I'm best at. So I'm working on the design technology side, and yeah, that's me.
That's great. Well, thanks both. And I guess that the first question, as ever, I ask so many of our partners is really, what led to the founding of Captego and the development of your solution? And you've touched on it to an extent, and I'm always really keen to hear about the background, skills, and experience of not only yourselves, but the team that you've put together.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, while I met Bjarke quite a few years ago, and I work in mainly with financial software. I work with banks, I work with B2B transaction networks, and so on. And while I moved to the US at some point during my career, Bjarke and me, we kept the contact, and he kept harassing me and telling about, it's great with all this fintech, but have you seen what goes on in documentation in construction? These projects are probably the largest and most expensive things we do in society. And imagine, there's actually, I think we can put it this way, in this forum, there's room for improvement in managing documentation, collecting it and then sharing it, and just the collaborative nature and providing value from the data that's collected. Because he also told me a bit about compliance, and there's actually quite a deal of compliance that needs to be taken care of, but it could go well beyond that, he said. Bjarke also loves technology, but he doesn't have the software background and maybe more that we have. So he has a deep empathy, and he has experienced a lot of issues, lack of great solutions on his own body and company. So that was actually when I came back to Denmark. We said, okay, let's try it out. We're going to build something, and we actually built a prototype relatively quickly. And we showed it to a few companies, and one of them is an insurance company. They say, hey, that actually looks pretty good. We think we can use that. And we showed it also to a housing company in Denmark, and they actually put some money behind even before the product existed. Said, yeah, we believe that because we can see the legal department is growing and the other departments are relative in size, not growing as much as the legal department. We think we need data as well. We are also technology company. We are also data companies. We are not only building houses. So that's basically how it started. The prototype ended out actually working quite nicely, and we could see we actually co-created quite a lot of the core functionality that is in the product today. We've been at it for almost 3 years now. So a lot of the functionality was the basic foundation of what is still Captego was built back then. And we could see the efficiency by providing smarter means of collecting data, managing the data, and providing some outputs that also had value, and trying to eliminate or at least automate as much as possible. So so the inspectors or the surveyors could actually do more of what they should be doing and not spending time copying notes and files and so on. So that's how it all started.
Great. So, I mean, how would you sort of summarize your solution, and what's the sort of underlying technology that makes it work and provides all the value?
I could probably summarize the technology. I think we've had a lot of discussions around this in terms of coming up with taglines that could go with the brand. And um, you know, I think, Andrew, you and I have had this discussion, I think, briefly before about the term prop tech, and we're not a prop tech solution because we don't just focus on property. And I think, you know, Mikkel mentions the problem with documentation in construction and surveyors, etc. But actually, that spreads across many different industries, and we consider ourselves more of a data tech as opposed to a prop tech or a construction tech, purely because we help people collect, manage, and report data efficiently. And so we've looked for this kind of really fast and simple solution in the collection of it so that people really spend the time to collect good quality data and then make it super simple to actually have a powerful output, whether that be, you know, PDF reports in some industries or actually big data in the cases of these sort of large collection over big businesses. So it's really the collection, management, and reporting of data that we kind of handle very, very well. And that's kind of how I would summarize it if I was speaking to someone that didn't know who Captego were. But underlying tech, we have a web admin and a mobile app that synchronize between the two in real time, which is really important. I think we'll touch on that in a moment. But the core thing is that the mobile app is simple to use and can work offline as well. So although it's real-time synchronization between web app and mobile app, the fact that it can work offline means that even in the remotest of areas or in the circumstances where you can't have phone signal or Wi-Fi, you're able to still carry out your job and collect good quality data, and then it syncs later on. In terms of the actual tech, Mikkel is the tech guy out of the two of us, so it's probably best that he elaborates a little bit on some of the challenges around data and how we've used technology to combat that, actually.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah, and I think that's actually also related to the type of application we are, because when David says that we have a mobile app, it's actually sorry if I have to rewind a little bit, but that's also back to the founding and the core principles of what we're doing, because we can see that when everything else fails, people take their camera on the phone and snap a photo, and then they have a bunch of photos, and then they build work for themselves in the future, because of course you cannot have them with your vacation photos and margaritas on the beach. It needs to be pulled into a work context later, and maybe even erased from your phone if you don't want to watch it with the family later. So we are a camera. We try to compete with the camera because we can see that is actually a very efficient and nice fallback solution, because it has at least some rich capture in the field, so you can remember things. So it's more, Captego is more built like a camera app, and then we try to recreate, or with the user's input, the data that's actually needed in the field. So we needed a platform where we could easily transfer significant amounts of data, manage photos on the device, do some compression, collect as much information as possible, process it efficiently, and be able to report it back to the users. We are heavily reliant on Google Cloud platform, of course, there is a number of platforms to choose from. Google offers great possibilities for us to have data local, both for compliance but also for efficient communication with the servers. And then it's for us. I'm a product designer, so a platform that's relatively easy and fast to build new features and prototype features. We have a lot of things in the product pipeline that we built and is only available to a small segment of users. And it allows us to work with great flexibility, learn from the people who use the platform, and co-create new features before they hit the core product. So that's basically Google Cloud. And we use a lot of the Google stack. And then, for instance, we have a solution for the more technically inclined people. There is Google BigQuery, because we have a big production database, and there is some they call indexes running on top of that to make data easy to find and retrieve and so on. And then everything is replicated into Google's big data store, which is Google BigQuery, where we can work with billions and billions of rows of data without really encountering any issues. So that allows us to deliver rich and processed analytics data for some of our larger customers, especially who want this. They may want this in Power BI or some other BI solution.
Exactly.
So we can process the data, and then when we have, let's say, unlimited capacity, at least theoretically. I don't know if there is a practical limit. I'm sure we're not approaching that yet, because I've seen some of the data sets that get processed on BigQuery. That's impressive, and of course there's a lot of this new technology that we have available, so we can focus on delivering the best possible solutions. And also prototyping is a big part of what we do, because that's of course how you build the best products. That's looking at how users are using it, and not just giving weird or unfinished functionality to the masses. So,
that's great. So, I mean, I suppose moving back up sort of from the technology stack to the kind of the real world, as it were, of the users and the solution. You mentioned an insurance company as being an early adopter. It'd be great to hear about what they use it for, and indeed, you know, some other initial use cases that are now well embedded. So it'd be great to hear about, you know, once you have the technology, what are people actually now getting value from it?
Yeah, I could take that. So with the insurance one, it's a really, really good use case actually. And it was when I joined Captego that use case was given to me as how Captego is used and the benefits. And it really blew me away to the point where I actually joined the business because I was actually that impressed. So I really like telling this story. So property insurance, if you imagine they go and inspect the property, they do then a year's check and then a 5-year check. And so these inspectors or surveyors were going out to the property and conducting maybe 2 to 5 surveys in a day. And they were only able to actually check around 20% of the stock that they were insuring, just due to the sheer volume of properties that they were insuring. And so they had to check a certain amount to mitigate enough risk. And that was kind of around 20%. And they were using manual processes. So it really, I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it was a bit of a mess in terms of collecting the data and then reporting it. Now, since using Captego, they're actually able to check 100% of the stock that they're insuring, which means that they are mitigating some of that risk by actually checking them before they put insurance on them. But also, they've actually managed to reduce the amount of resource it takes to then check 100%. So it's actually really tipped the scales. And now they're able to go from 2 to 5 a day to 20 to 30, just purely from eliminating the need for sitting behind the desk and actually pulling that data together. They're able to go out and efficiently, you know, snap the data, as we say. We click done is kind of an internal term of how easy it is to actually capture. And they can really spend the time to look for the stuff they need to report, and they don't need to worry about all the sort of manual tasks that would follow from collecting a lot of data. And I think that's a really great use case because their productivity has gone through the roof, and also being able to mitigate some of the risk by checking more of what they insure. So really,
and I suppose that builds on your earlier point, thank you, around your solution being not just for the built environment, you know, a very wide applicable kind of horizontal application. I mean, thinking specifically of the built environment, which is itself a very broad church in terms of the kind of things that surveyors and people do right across the life cycle of construction. Where are people using it now within the built environment, and also perhaps where do you see other use cases for this technology in the built environment?
I could take that one again because I've actually got some good experience around this. I've actually worked with quite a few firms within construction and also surveyors in particular around the residential surveys actually, and I think that makes a really relevant use case actually to share. So the first one is the construction use case where by site managers, project managers, anyone really overseeing a project, even clerk of works in a lot of cases, they're actually able to collect a stream of data throughout the whole project, from the first kind of bucket in the ground right through to, you know, the handover of keys in the house building world. They're able to collect this stream of data in one place, which means that they're able to see the project develop, where things could, like defects could be slowing up projects, but also it makes it a more efficient workflow. One of the things Mikkel and I were talking about in construction was there's less delay between receiving the data. So I spoke to a construction company in particular. They were saying that actually by the time the data is collected, taken away, compiled into a report, sent back to site to action, you've lost a day, 2 days. And that, you know, the ability to have that data instantly can actually save a lot of time on a project because you can't progress until certain defects are covered. And so construction's a really, really good use case, and we have the ability to assign out things like snags and defects for a really efficient workflow. But one of my favorite use cases is actually the surveyors, and especially within the residential sector, although it works across all environments, commercial and asset management, etc. Residential surveys, level 1 through to 3. I've actually done a lot of work building templates that work really efficiently in that using the RICS standard and structure. And they're able to really increase their productivity because you go and do a level 3 building survey, you've got your travel time, your research time, your time at site, and you want to spend a really good amount of time actually finding the things to report to really add value to your customer and get what they're paying for. But then you've got to travel home, and then you sit behind a desk downloading your images from an SD card, remembering what it was from a picture or shorthand notes, and then really having to type it up. And I've spoken to some surveyors that go home and do that in the evening, and it's kind of like, well, actually, that's quality time that should be with the family. And so being able to have a surveyor go out to site and actually allow them to collect arguably better quality data because they can take as many pictures as they like, and it really doesn't affect the report creation time, but also having the ability to add notes and enrich that data on site because they know that they're not creating extra work for themselves later. That's the time they're on site is the quality time, and that's where they put the effort in. And so a surveyor, I mean, Mikkel and I were talking about this, and it's like you could actually do an extra survey a day in some of the cases we've seen, which is, if a surveyor is listening to this and they're thinking to do an extra level 3 every single day would be incredible, but also it's almost unbelievable. Even if you was to take just 2 extra surveys a week as a result of being more productive, that's a huge kind of use case, but also return on investment because there's a cost to use technology within work. And so that's one of my favorite use cases because I think they see an instant value. As soon as they use it for the first time, first click of taking a picture, they've just saved themselves 5 minutes of report writing. Take another picture, that's 10, and it's almost as simple as that kind of value as soon as they click that first button. So I really love that use case within the
you obviously mentioned that the fact that obviously for surveyors, they're running businesses, that productivity and efficiency is a key issue. That balance between billable hours and hours that they have to do to support their business and make the wheels go round. And so I'm sure a majority of our members, both UK and across the world, aren't working for large corporates. They're working in smaller practices, and we're always keen to understand how technology will work not just for large corporates, but also for SMEs, small practices, micro businesses. At a nuts and bolts level, how does your solution fit in with that kind of ecosystem of small businesses where they may have a number of applications? They may be literally a sole practitioner where they are the be and all and end all of the business, and they have to make sure these things integrate. How does your application work for that kind of smaller practice, micro business SME, as opposed to a large corporate where I'm sure it's equally valuable as well?
I think that there are multiple levels where you can say that it actually, you can say in a way, Captego is as much built for the small companies as for the large companies. I think the small companies we have on the platform benefit from the no-code nature of the platform. And actually, when we first started out, because Bjarke, our co-founder, he's also not a developer, and he said he needs to be able to model the templates, the type of inspection data that needs to be collected, without having to code, because the developers were busy. We couldn't just support Bjarke with new templates for saying now we need to go and say we have digging permits for a local government. We need to present how that's going to work. So we have a full editor where individuals, even just that can be small engineering consultancies, can build their own terms. Say, I want to collect my data like this. It may be just like you can say, now you have not seen the application necessarily, those who listen, but say I want a camera with 2 buttons so I can collect concrete and reinforcement. I want that camera because that's what I'm documenting. You can model that, and the data you get in gets reported like that. You can decide the output, how's the automated build report being made. So even an individual engineer or surveyor can actually build something that feels like it's an optimized solution that a software design company or the consultancy delivered. So it's optimized for collection and output. So it's incredibly flexible in that way, and it's almost like modifying a spreadsheet, but just connected. You have a camera connected that structures your data real time on the other side, and that's how you can see a lot of the smaller companies get engaged in Captego. There's actually one other way, that is if you're a large house builder, even a smaller house builder, you don't want to do all the reporting, and then back to the roots of what we do. Because it's almost impossible to engage all the subcontractors in a construction project. There are so many different profiles that their main responsibility is making sure the bricks are stacked. It looks great. The electrician is there to do that job. The plumber does a job. It would be great to have it all documented, or at least as much as possible. So if we can engage them, and in a way you can say they're also like, a lot of them are smaller companies and they don't have an IT department. They have some highly specialized subcontracts or construction workers, but they can get the Captego app as well. So it's actually distributed from the project owner, and they can engage it. They don't pay for it if you are. That's actually paid for by the core contract or the project owner. So they just get access to limited parts of the projects and report back into the overall hierarchy of data. And that way they can get started using Captego and actually helping the project owners get the reporting data. Sometimes we get a lot, sometimes we don't get anything. That's something we are still learning. We have projects where 3 carpenters over the duration of a month made more than 1,000 registrations from a house. And then, of course, we have cases where we don't get a lot, but then we also have a lot who just get 2 photos of concrete being poured on the reinforcement. That's fine. It's maybe better than nothing. So it's about getting from all the phases of the construction and engaging as many as possible. And that's so you can say it actually touches more people than own projects in Captego. And that's the whole goal, that is to make it so easy that people don't take the camera they have in their pocket, because then they are just building work ahead. Because it ends up in an email or it ends up in a spreadsheet, the data is probably lost, or at least we know sometimes it's going to be wasted. Computers should manage that, not people. So that's how we see we fit in at different levels. And definitely the no code approach to being able to just try and model it like a spreadsheet and say, maybe this is good for me when I collect data because I do this special thing. We have EV charger installation. Nobody ever built a great app for EV charger installations, but actually someone did now, because it's built on Captego as a bespoke template that's highly optimized for just doing that. And that's where hopefully we can become a platform for innovation in the future, and saying that actually things where we need, or situations where we need something that's highly specialized for this kind of inspection.
No, I mean, and that's a very important point you bring out about that kind of collaboration between the different trades and contractors within particularly construction side, because as you know, you're going to have various tiers of levels of people working on a particular site, certain specialist trades, as you say, coming in. And if we can encourage that sort of almost communal data collection, because trade comes onto site, they do their specific task, they capture a few photographs. That's a very positive way, I think, of getting what can be quite a kind of fragmented process to have a common data host, effectively, to have a common timeline of who has done what on a certain time. And I think that is important, because unfortunately construction is a case of herding cats, if that's an expression that works in Denmark, in terms of trying to organize people that aren't necessarily inherently keen to be organized in that way. So that's great. And certainly it's very important that I think technology is as simple as possible. I know we touched earlier on the technology stack, but ultimately we're talking about people who want to use technology, not have to understand the bits and bytes and concern themselves. I mean, without giving away any trade secrets, I mean, I'm keen to understand before we close where you see perhaps some of the areas where you might be adding functionality. Are you looking at perhaps using, I don't know, machine learning to identify objects automatically, that kind of thing, where you'd be looking at a photograph and adding some value in terms of that sort of identification of either defects or picking up objects? Is that something you've been looking at?
It's really interesting you ask, and mention that we've got a few things in the pipeline. Some things we can't give away just yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we want to make sure that it's finalized and we get it out there.
No, sorry, I'm not.
at first, but we are working on some very exciting stuff, and I think it loops back to what Mikkel mentioned earlier, that we run a very lean methodology. And so the way that the software is developed, we're constantly listening to our customers. So, if I sit in a meeting with a surveyor, anyone that has experience within those markets, we're not surveyors, we're not project managers. We are good at solving problems. And so we hear those problems and then we bring the solution to them. So we're constantly developing new features that the markets are asking for. And we really kind of test that challenge. Is it just a nice to have? Is it really going to add value to the built environment or to automotive or EV charge point? And if it does, and it fits in line with what Captego is about, which is making it super easy and simple and fast to collect structured data and be able to manage and report that, then we look to see, can we add it into our roadmap? So everything that's coming is what the market's asking for, a lot of it within the built environment. So I'll be really excited to release some of that detail on future webinars.
Indeed.
And I just want to loop back as well, because about the small businesses, large businesses, Mikkel mentioned it in terms of like the tech departments. A large business might have an actual whole department of technology and be able to implement it. And I think the small businesses, I talk to a lot of small firms, small construction firms, small surveying firms, and some of them instantly think, oh no, we're too small to implement technology before they've even seen the solution. We're quite small, we don't need stuff like that. It really does. Actually, I think it's more important that the smaller firms look at technology to assist in what they're doing, because one person, if you talked about billable hours, there's only so many hours in a day that one surveyor can run around doing building surveys, and they don't want to compromise quality for volume. And so the only way they can scale is by hiring another surveyor, which comes with its risks at a small business level, in terms of cash flow, etc. You've really got to have the workflow to be able to jump and take on another person and salary position. So what using technology does is it allows those smaller businesses to really lean up their operations and become more productive, which means they can achieve more in workflow, they're more revenue at a smaller size, which means then they are taking less risk by scaling because they've got more cash coming in. So actually the smaller businesses really benefit from this because they're able to achieve so much more on less resource. So I think that's really important to call out, that technology can be a great thing even for the smallest of businesses. Pricing will always be relevant to the size of the operation. If you're a large firm that's working on I was looking this morning at the DIO, the Department of Infrastructure organization. They've got this, I think it's £1.6 billion facilities management project, and it's gone to the likes of Mighty and so on. Their budgets are going to be so much bigger, but so is their operation. And what they would pay to collect that level of data would be different from a surveyor working on their own. And so our pricing fits that model. It's scalable with the business. So anyone that's very small needs to consider that technology can help them, and it's priced accordingly.
Certainly. One of the core reasons we're doing this program is to make sure that all our members understand that technology is ultimately about value and productivity, and it's not tech for tech's sake. It is about making processes better, higher quality, and more efficient, and enabling surveyors to do what they do best, which is to survey, but not do the necessarily the sort of low-level data collection, as it were, and just be more productive in that sense. So, well, it's been great to talk, and I look forward to our next episode. It'd be great to have a look at the product in action and look at some of the kind of timelines in terms of the way you capture data, and really look at and dig a bit deeper into some of these use cases. So it's been great to talk to you both, and I look forward to our next episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.